dudes and dudettes. Do people still say that? I saw Jurassic World Rebirth, baby, which is crazy because I'm nobody and I don't ever get invited to things. And I wanted to kind of take a day or so to ruminate on it, as it were. Is through AMC's like mystery movie thing, which I never partook in because even though they are only $5 in this economy, even though admittedly it was spoiled for me ahead of time, it was not exactly a mystery to moi. As soon as I heard that it was, I was like, gotta get me some tickets because I have been a lifelong Jurassic fan. Growing up, I was very much that pain in the ass kid who, whether he wanted to or not, would learn a handful of new dino facts if you were to ever be around me. This may come as a surprise, but I didn't have many friends growing up. But one thing I did have was knowledge and hyperfixations. And mine just so happened to be dinosaurs. So I knew like everything there was to know about dinosaurs. And needless to say, Jurassic Park was one of my favorite movies. Look, I even have my own little dinosaur. Hey, buddy. Anything to say? Very astute observations. I grew up in a household that was very lax with the movie watching. I think, if I remember correctly, Jurassic Park was like the first adult movie that I saw. Essentially, the first movie that was not rated G or PG. A Lost World Jurassic Park was the first movie that I ever saw in theaters. Again, when I was probably way too young to be doing so. I would have been 4 years old, probably. So I don't really remember seeing it, but undoubtedly it blew my mind and awakened my ongoing love of film in general. And I will say, before I get into things, just to get it off my chest, to tell you what kind of a person that you're dealing with. Sorry, guys, this is very tough for me to say. This is very brave, so I enjoy Jurassic Park 3. I know. It's not necessarily a good movie. I can admit that, but it is a very fun movie. If you just want 90 minutes of pure dumb dino action, it's the movie for you. I just love like the blues and the greens and the grays. It has my favorite raptor design of the entire series, and I love the Spinosaurus. I love the Spinosaurus. The Spinosaurus to me, growing up, was like the coolest dino. It could fight on land, it could swim, it was bigger and badder and swoller and longer than the T-Rex. It was just so cool. I know I'm very much alone in that camp. There are few of us Jurassic Park 3 defenders, but defend it I shall. I shall die on this hill, and though I may die alone, my cause is a noble one. But yeah, I did, for the most part, like the Jurassic World trilogy, though my thoughts on that are a lot more mixed. I really liked Jurassic World, though I thought it did play it a little safe. Fallen Kingdom, I like I like parts of it. I like maybe half of it, but I have grown to enjoy it more over the years. And then Dominion, yes, I like parts of Dominion. Basically anything with like 10 minutes of actual dinosaurs. Oh, and Camp Cretaceous and Chaos Theory are freaking awesome. So if you've not seen those, check them out. So when they announced a rebirth of the trilogy, if you will, I was very excited, and especially excited because the Spinosaurus was coming back, and I will say that for the most part, I really enjoyed myself. Before I get into things, I will say I'm not very good at not spoiling things. It's very much in my blood, in my Dano DNA. So I will try and get my non-spoiler thoughts out of the way first, and then once this guy pops up, you know that I'm going to get down to the nitty-gritty to the DNA of it. You don't want to know about the movie, just go ahead and click off. I mentioned Jurassic Park 3 mostly because I do feel like this is the slightly older, slightly angstier version of Jurassic Park 3. If you took like everything in Jurassic Park 3 and just kind of doubled it, I feel like that is sort of this movie. First and foremost, story-wise, just like Jurassic Park 3, it is standalone. You don't necessarily need knowledge of the series or prior events going into it. And it did seem like there was a fair amount of newcomers in my audience. I sat next to this mother and son duo. I would not be surprised if the mother had never seen a Jurassic Park movie, because anytime a dinosaur was on screen, even if it was one of the good, cute ones, she was just freaking the hell out. She was crapping in her khakis because she didn't know what the hell was going on. Don't go to the dang movies if you're going to ruin it for everyone around you. I will say that the audience seemed really into it, which is more than I can say for at least Dominion. It did seem like a lot of people knew what the mystery movie was, but were there because they wanted to see a Jurassic. And so there was a really good energy going into things, and it was able to kind of maintain itself throughout the showing. I would not necessarily say that it's inappropriate for kids, but it is definitely a little bit darker, a little bit more violent than some of the other Jurassic movies. Maybe kind of on par with Jurassic World. I had heard going into it that there was like a lot more violence and blood, and comparatively maybe, like compared to Jurassic Park or Jurassic Park 3, yeah, there's probably a little bit more, but it's really not that different. I think if your kid or family member, whoever, could handle those two movies, I think they'll be fine. But yes, double everything in Jurassic Park 3. Not only is it about twice as long, it's not 3 hours, but it's about an extra hour. Characters are maybe twice as interesting, twice as fleshed out, which is not saying much, granted, but it also kind of feels like the same story in a way. It's sort of like a rescue/retrieval mission with this team of mercenaries that's hired to do this thing, get in, get out, dino carnage ensues. But it does feel like this kind of takes its time a little bit more. Not necessarily scares, but outside of like the action scenes. One scene in particular, maybe like half-ish way through the movie, the introduction of the Mutadons is a really fun kind of tense scene because it doesn't play out exactly like how you think it is. It's mostly, in fact, it's all like in the background. Still like the focus of the scene, so you're not going to miss it, but played out in a very kind of unconventional way, even like a kind of a funny way, which was interesting, but I didn't dislike at all. And that's another thing that I think this movie does really well with attention. I think Gareth Edwards really knows how to shoot the dinos. Not like pew pew shoot, but like pew pew shoot. With the Mutadons, at least in that first scene, and then especially with the D-Rex, a lot of it is like obscured either in the background or with darkness or with smoke. The D-Rex, who really only comes into the movie, he like bookends the movie. He's in the very beginning and like the very end, so don't expect a whole lot of D-Rex. The way that he handles the D-Rex is very similar to, I would say, like Jaws or like any kind of big monster movie, where you never really quite get full good look at the D-Rex. And I think if they had not released brightly lit promo materials and we didn't know really what the D-Rex looked like at all, I think it really would have helped. Because he does some really cool things with smoke and obscurity. Even when you do see like the full thing, it's back and it's dark, so you never really quite know what you're looking at. And I really wish they would have held off. Like, I feel like they could have probably gotten away with pushing the Mutadons as like the featured big bad and maybe had the D-Rex as like a surprise. Because I would say that the Mutadons are really the only ones other than the D-Rex that like come back for more than one scene. I wouldn't say they pose the most threat, but they are maybe like the most interesting, and they kind of tie into the theme the most. And see where the franchise goes from here in terms of like how important these events are, because there are some very big implications at the end of this movie, not just necessarily for like dinosaurs, but for humanity in general. So it'd be interesting to see if they pick up on those plot threads later on. The first act, I would say, is where the bulk, if not all, of the character development and kind of emotional moments happen. There are back to back kind of a handful of scenes where you learn about the pasts of our main characters. And it is a little bit clunky. The exposition feels natural in that like these are clearly friends that are talking, like they know each other, there's a history, but it is still kind of like, and the son that you have, how is he? Zora Bennett, a mercenary, I presume. Yes, I am a very good mercenary. That's not what Zora sounds like. But a lot of stuff like that, which is fine. You know, we don't need like their entire life story. And I do think we get enough to care about them, which is more than you could probably say for like anybody in Jurassic Park 3. So that was nice. And it's pretty quick from there. But it does feel like it breathes a little bit more than Jurassic Park 3, which is just kind of like scene after scene after scene. There's a couple like little slow moments sprinkled throughout once they get to the island, but it is still very much like, okay, we're here. We got that boring emotional stuff out of the way. Now we just want the dino stuff. But I will say, I did like the characters. I was a little afraid what we saw in the trailers would be like the bulk of who they were, and for the most part, it kind of was, but there was a little bit more to it. Scarlett Johansson, Zora, is probably like the mainest of the main characters, and from the trailer, I was a little worried that she would be like, the gruff and devil. I don't know why that's my Scarlett Johansson. I'm Zora Bennett. Watch out, dinosaurs. Watch out, fellow humans. Like, you know, there's that kind of like, I'm a tough chick thing. And she does kind of have those moments. She does feel like she kind of distances herself from some of the other human characters. But it's not in like a mean way. It's not in like a tough way. She feels a little guarded, but she feels like she cares, you know, which is nice. Then we have Jonathan Bailey as Henry Loomis. And again, I was a little worried from the trailer that that kind of quirky, bumbling nerd archetype would just be kind of who he is throughout. And he is that quirky nerd, but he's not bumbling, which I did like. He can handle his own. There's really only like one moments maybe I can think of where he needs like to be rescued. But even in those moments, like he kind of handles his own. But I did like that they still kind of kept the quirkiness. He is obviously like brought on to the team because he knows the dinosaurs, he knows the stuff. So he's not the muscle, he's the brains, but he isn't kind of that stereotypical like holier than thou, like I'm smarter than you, so stay behind me, you know, that kind of thing. He knows his stuff. He very clearly like loves and appreciates dinosaurs. At least got the feeling that the other mercenaries respected him. And then kind of rounding out the main trio of the mercenaries is Duncan, played by Mahershala Ali. I didn't really know what to think of him from the trailer because he wasn't really in the trailer a whole lot. He has like a couple like of those trailer lines. Being the leader of the mercenaries, you know, you're always worried that he's going to be like the tough, like, oh, I gotta protect my people, oh, we gotta stick to the mission, that kind of thing. So there was a little bit of, but he was nice. He was emotional. He was caring, and I really liked that about the men in this movie. Is that like they were not really like the kind of stereotypical action tough guy like Owen Grady. There was no outrunning a pyroclastic flow. There's no flopping away from lava that's inches away from you. Like, you know, they felt capable, but they didn't feel they were just invincible. Like they had this bubble around them. There was obviously some plot armor. You kind of know going into it who's gonna live, who's gonna die, and there was really no surprises in that regard. But there were a few moments, especially I would say with Henry, that were like a split second. You're like, oh, 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 Did they just like try and pull something with him? And spoiler alert, no. Actually, the main trio oddly kind of gives me like Atlantis vibes. The animated Atlantis. Henry Loomis gives very strong like Milo Thatch vibes. Zora gives more good guy version of Helga, and then Duncan really reminded me of like Doctor Sweet. I don't know if there was like a Atlantis, the Lost Empire influence with this movie. The other half of the human cast, the Delgado family, I was fully prepared to dislike going into it because one of the things with the Jurassic movies is that they need those kind of audience surrogates. Those the kids, of course, for the kid audience, and then the kind of everyman who needs things explained to them, and then we as the audience get the info through that. But the Delgado family seemed like they were comprised of like every not fun Jurassic stereotype. The little girl who's like afraid of everything and screams at everything, and then there's the older sister who's like, ew, dirt, I like boys. And then there's like the boyfriend character who's like, stay behind me, babe. And then the dad who's like, don't you kids go running off. Uh, and while you could kind of boil down their characters to those archetypes, yes, there was luckily more to them. Arguably, the standout character of the movie was Xavier, the boyfriend character. He's very much the comic relief. And from like his first scene, I was expecting to just hate him, but he gets a nice kind of arc through the movie, and he provides most like the humorous moments in the movie. But it feels natural for the character. It's not like they're just like trying to work in these like cringy jokes, but never in like a grating way. I'd say he's not necessarily one that like has non sequiturs for everything. He has like a fun quip every now and then, so it works. And then there's also Martin Krebs, Mr. Krabs, as I call him, the kind of rich billionaire character who funds the team, funds the expedition, and without giving anything away, you know exactly what kind of character he's going to be. Actually, I will give things away, so we'll get into spoiler territory now. Within 5 minutes of him being on screen, that he's going to turn out to be the big bad, because in these movies the kind of corporate suits, they're always the big bad. So I was not at all surprised by his heel turn, which they didn't even wait till the third act to show that he was a scummy guy. Like as soon as they reach the island, he does not rescue the eldest daughter, which leads to the two groups of characters getting separated, and then kind of tries to cover up his tracks. And so from there that like he's a scummy character, which I don't necessarily think these movies like need a human villain. That's another thing that I kind of like about Jurassic Park 3 is that like, there's really no bad human character. Like Billy's kind of misguided, but he has a heroic moment in the end. But all the other ones, I think have had those kind of like human villains, which, when given enough time, can be quite interesting. Like going back to Chaos Theory, the show, I really have started to like Siona. Soyona. I never remember exactly her name, but like I didn't care about her at all in Dominion, but they really added some cool depth and detail and character to her in Chaos Theory. So I was kind of hoping that if they had to have a human villain this time, they would do some of that, flesh him out a bit, make him a little bit interesting, and give him a motivation other than money, 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 money. But no, I did feel really bad for all of the extra mercenaries. Atwood is the first to go. He has like 5 minutes of screen time, and then the poor female mercenary dies like maybe 2 minutes later in a very unceremonious way. It almost felt like they forgot about her, like they forgot that like she was still in the movie, or that like the actress had to like go off and do something else, so they just like hastily wrote in a death scene for her that kind of happens off screen. Like it's on screen, but it's obscured and has moved on from very, very quickly. Spinosaurus or the Spinosaurs, actually, they take out like two of the three supporting characters. So again, very much like Jurassic Park 3, one other mercenary character dies like halfway through the movie to another dino. So the Spinosaurs are really open up their body count. And while I did really like that, at least with two of the three, there was like a very quick moment of mourning for them. It wasn't just like, oh, well, so and so's dead. Let's keep on moving. There's a little bit of that, and the third mercenary character who dies, I don't remember them like saying anything at all about him, even though he was the one who got the most screen time. But that was nice. It was a nice little detail. I do really wish that they would have had the guts to maybe kill somebody else, the family members or even Duncan. Like the trailers very clearly kind of set up that Duncan is probably going to die, and the movie makes you think that Duncan heroically sacrifices himself. It's the closest thing that this movie has, I would say, to like an emotional death or a death that means something. And then like 30 seconds later, if that, they reveal that he's alive. Like there's just no real stakes in that regard. So there's some good tense moments, but the plot armor is very heavy in this movie. And I wouldn't say that you worry about anybody. I really would have loved if they could have spread the deaths out more. I really would have loved if they could have given maybe her death to the Mutadons, because as it is, the Mutadons don't kill anybody. Which is fine, but they're still threatening enough. But it's odd that they don't get anybody. Their one scene in the supermarket is kind of like how everybody thought it would be. It is kind of just like a lesser version of the raptors in the kitchen scene. Speaking of the raptors, they are in the movie for all of 10 seconds, maybe, in the background. You don't even really get a clear look at them, which was cool. At first, I was a little torn on it, but the more I thought about it, I did really like it. I liked how the scene was subverted, where you think is going one way, and then just something completely out of the blue happens. And it is a good way to establish the Mutadons as a credible threat, because obviously the raptors, other than the T-Rex, are like the overarching threat for these movies. And so if you take them out immediately, then you know that the thing you're dealing with is serious business, which is why I think it really could have hit even harder if they killed one of the characters. But then, that's enough of a climax where I don't even necessarily think they needed the D-Rex at the end. Because again, the D-Rex never really does anything that is outright threatening. Like it looks threatening, but it's not like it actively like attacks the people. It eats the guy at the beginning, and then it eats Martin. But it eats Martin because he drives the car into it, and so it sees him, and it thinks like, oh, new friends. But that's it. Like similar to the Therizinosaurus in Dominion, I think, where like it's not outright like combative. It's kind of like circumstantial. Like whereas Claire wandered into the Therizino's terrarium thing in Dominion, it was kind of like the opposite here, where like the D-Rex was let out and it kind of stumbles on to them. And almost in a way it feels like it doesn't really know what to make of them. It doesn't know if they are a new friend or food or what. You get the feeling that like the D-Rex has been out wandering all this time, so it's not like it's starving. So that was interesting. I think if they had played a little bit more into that, of this being like some kind of weird misunderstood genetic thing, it could have been a little bit more powerful. But as it is, the D-Rex is kind of just there and out of like all the big bad dinos in the series. It's probably the least threatening, I'd say, other than maybe the Giga. I would say it's maybe like a step above the Giga for me. As cool as the Giga looked, what did it do? What did the Giga do? So yeah, but it did look cool. Dino wise, I thought that it was a pretty good showcase. All the main dinosaurs, going into it. Like they're the ones shown in the trailers, and obviously all the Jurassic movies have those like cameo dinosaurs. And here it's no different. You get like the Compies and the Ankylosaur and everything. It was nice to see them. There are a couple extra tertiary dinosaurs, but they're kind of just more for scene dressing, which I did really like. It really helps this island feel more populated. There's a lot like kind of going on in the background. Strangely enough, the dinosaurs that recur the most in this movie are like the background ones. You'll see them kind of like running through the shot or like climbing on a tree. I don't even think they ever get like named. I don't think we've ever seen them before in the franchise. There really wasn't any attempt, I felt, to kind of like shoehorn in dinosaurs. You know, like with each Jurassic movie, there's kind of like the new dino, usually like the big bad. And sometimes it feels like, you know, they kind of just like bring them back to bring them back. Like as much as I love the finale of Jurassic World, it does kind of feel like they could have taken out the Indominus without the Mosasaur being there. But they wanted the Mosasaur there because the Mosasaur was like one of the big cool new dinos and things like that. Or like, you know, the T-Rex always has to be involved in the finale somehow. So it can kind of feel a little shoehorned, whereas this was much more, I feel like, episodic, which some fans I could see not liking. The dinosaurs that you see in the trailer, they're really kind of just relegated to those scenes, so don't really expect to see many recurring dinosaurs. Each one kind of gets their own set piece. I will say, very exciting set pieces. So it's not like they don't get to reach their full potential. There's only like one or two dinos in there that I would say you might feel a little bit gypped if you are a fan of those dinos. It still managed to have some tender moments. The Titanosaur moment was really nice, showing that, you know, these dinosaurs are still like living, breathing things. They still have feelings and love for one another. They're not just like mindless eating machines, not like me on a Saturday night, am I right? Each of the like three segments, the land, sea, and air, I think get some pretty good screen time. The land one with the Titanosaurs, you get that nice touching moment, but there's really not much else to it. It's more of like a spectacle moment. Whereas the sea and the air, I think, get some really nice tense moments. And I thought it was really interesting having the Quetzalcoatlus like scaling the side of the mountain. I thought that was really cool. I wish it had gone on a little bit longer. But it was nice having an avian threat again. I really love the Pteranodon cage in Jurassic Park 3. So having another threat that's on a slightly smaller scale than Dominion, whereas that scene was over way too quickly. I really liked that they kind of dragged this one out. The Quetzalcoatlus was a little bit smaller, and so was able to pose more of like a realistic threat. It was a little bit more even. Another thing that was kind of disappointing was Dolores. You know, I was maybe a little hopeful after Camp Cretaceous and Chaos Theory that getting kind of like a cute mascot dinosaur would actually lead to something. That is something that we've sort of had in the main movies with Blue and then with Beta, but there was no point to Dolores other than to look cute. I was expecting at least like the little girl lets her go like, Dolores, go push this button, save us, something, you know, and there was just nothing. Like Dolores is just there to look cute, to sell merchandise. Like with Bumpy in Camp Cretaceous, you know, Bumpy is there for the adventures, and as Bumpy grows, you know, Bumpy learns to protect kids, and so you feel like there's a point to Bumpy. Like they keep Bumpy around. Whereas here, it's just like, we need merch, but there's some implications that, like, when they take Dolores off the island at the end, like, from what they've set up, like, Dolores is dead. Like, the dinosaurs have not been able to thrive outside of these equator climates. So I don't know how they're going to take care of Dolores. She's probably good as dead. But hey, you do you. You might have stolen this cute baby dinosaur from her parents. But, you know, tourists. And one thing I think this movie did really, really well were the tense moments. You know, obviously, being a Spino fanboy, I was really interested and excited to see what they did with the Spinos. And I would say that I was mostly pleased with that. It's a standout scene, I would say. And while I would say that you've probably seen the bulk of that scene in the trailers. There is a little bit more to it. I was worried that the trailers probably gave away a little bit too much. While I would say that, like, you kind of see every action scene in the trailer, there is more to each scene, if that makes sense. So there is enough to be surprised by. And so I was never bored with the movie. Another thing I really appreciated is that they forewent what I would assume would probably be a desire to kind of shoehorn in a romance. There's a couple little hints here and there of like maybe some flirty moments between Zora and Henry, but they never really go anywhere. Zora makes it very clear, like, I ain't here for that. Henry doesn't really seem like he's that great with women anyway. I don't know. The only real romance was like between the boyfriend and girlfriend, and even that it wasn't like heavy-handed, which I appreciated. So often the good-looking male lead and the good-looking female lead, like, they have to get together. That's not the case here, which was very nice to see. Another thing, I saw people online were worried about some of the product placement, like the bags of chips and the convenience store scene. Those were not a focus at all. It was just mostly there for set dressing. The only real thing that really stuck out as a little bit awkward and cringy was probably the opening scene with the Snickers bar. I'm sure they could have figured out a way to get the D-Rex out of the enclosure without a Snickers wrapper getting sucked up, shorting the circuits, but who knows? Maybe Snickers paid a butt ton of money to be in the movie. I get that, the Jurassic movies are ultimately kind of like a corporate merch grab, so I didn't fault it so much in that way, but a little more creativity could have been nice, because there is a lot of creativity elsewhere in the movie. Gareth Edwards, I love from Rogue One, from the creator, like you could tell he had fun making this movie, and he put some thought into things and into the action sequences, and it would have maybe been a little bit nicer if that was also given to the script. Not that the script was dumb, it is David Koepp, who obviously is a very smart writer. He wrote 1 and 2, but just those like little weird moments that kind of remind you that you're still watching a Jurassic movie, that it can't get too serious and scientific anymore, because we do need that silliness, that corporatization that appeals to everyone. It makes you want to go get a Snicker to satisfy your dino-sized hunger after the movie. As for a follow-up to this, I don't know. I would like to see more from these characters. I think they're more interesting than the Jurassic World characters. Some very interesting implications with the ending of the movie, because they do make it safely off the island with these samples. So in theory, they're going to be able to cure heart disease. And maybe, who knows, any other untold diseases with this dino blood. So that's very interesting. I hope if they proceed from here on, I hope they don't pull what they did with the beginning of this movie, where they just kind of retcon everything by saying, oh, well, the dino DNA didn't bond with the human DNA, so there goes that. I really would have liked if they could have continued with the dinos in the real world plot, but other than one little moment, like, it just kind of swept under the rug, which is disappointing. Like, they actively say that years after Dominion, like, people have stopped caring about dinosaurs. Like, come on, Jurassic Park. Like, we now, having not had dinosaurs for millions of years, we are still fascinated by dinosaurs, whereas in this universe, they have actively had real living dinosaurs in probably their own backyard, and they're bored with them? No. Like, I can see them being anti-dinosaur. Like, we don't think these things are a good idea, they need to be killed, whatever. Being bored with them? I can kind of understand it on some points. Like, once you've seen a living, breathing thing, like, you don't need to go to the museum and see, like, the bones. But then again, we do that now with like zoos and with museums. Like, there's animal skeletons and things in museums and science stuff, so it's not like we aren't curious about these things. But all in all, I wouldn't say there was like a lot of surprises to it. You can probably piece together, I'd say probably like 85% of the movie from the trailers alone. But again, they did keep enough of it secret where we'll be entertained. Don't expect high cinema. Don't expect award-winning anything. Maybe effects. The dinos did look very good, even though I don't think there were any practical effects. Maybe like one or two. Other than that, though, it's very simple. It's I'd say classic Jurassic. You go into it just like how you did with Jurassic Park 3. Just mindless, fun, dino, popcorn schlock. It took me back to being a kid again and being in a theater and just kind of like seeing that fun dino imagination. It didn't really feel like there was too much of a message. I think if the series has more of this, maybe not fully standalone episodes, but as long as thought is put into it, I think the Jurassic movies could continue to go on for a while. But yeah, I think that'll about do it. If you are a fan of the Jurassic franchise, go see the movie, go support it, if only so that we can, get more Jurassic in the future. But I would say that this is genuinely, in my opinion at least, a step up from what we've gotten in the past. So that was really nice to see. If you saw the preview of Jurassic World Rebirth, let me know what you thought below. If you haven't yet, let me know once you do go check it out. Otherwise, let me know either what dinosaur you're hoping to see in this one or in the future. Let me know which one you'd like to see make a comeback. I would really love a new kind of feature of the Triceratops and the Stegosaurus. I know they've gotten cameos throughout the series, but we really haven't gotten any features with them since like the first two movies. That'll do it for me, guys. Thank you so much for watching and listening to me ramble. Go ahead and like the video if you can. Leave a comment, subscribe, and I will be back soon with more creepy collection content and maybe some dastardly dino content as well. But in the meantime, don't forget, stay spooky.